Well, this is what I call the 3D 3P system. You know, Jeffrey Gitomer, if you've been in sales at all, you've heard him say, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And I think that's a very astute observation. You need to have a system that works for you for kind of analyzing what you're doing. When I was in the newspaper subscription business, I thought about what I was doing while I was sitting there trying to get people to buy subscriptions. And what I came up with was the 3D 3P system. And this is just a Tinker Toy, modern Tinker Toy type of representation. You could do something like this. You could put it on paper. You could even do it in your head, although I would recommend that you actually write it down so that you have something that you can refer back to, because you're going to remember things and you're going to forget things as they come along. So here's how it works, basically. You got a three-dimensional axis here. You got the vertical, the horizontal, and the in and out, okay? And all you do is you look at your system, whether you're looking at a product, a company, a sales situation, in three axes, three dimensions, hence 3D. You've got the prospect, the presentation, and the product. And it goes on a continuum. You've got the product on one side, the prospect on the other, and the presentation is what bridges the gap. So what I do is I look at those three dimensions, the product, the prospect, and the presentation, and I do a pro and con list. I've got positives and negatives. That's why the green and the red on each of these three dimensions. So for the newspaper subscription, as an example, we'll carry through with that. What I would do is I would look at the pros and cons of the prospect. Well, one, they should be English reading, and they should have the money to afford a subscription. They should be in the area, although they don't have to be, but that makes it more pertinent for them. They want the local news, they want to be informed. What are some of the negatives of the prospect? Well, they had to be, again, English speaking. If they were Spanish speaking, that was a negative prospect. And we have a fair amount of migrant workers in this area. So that would work against it. I would want to try and come up with areas. I wouldn't want to market in areas that were predominantly non-English speaking. And there are neighborhoods like that in every city. You have groups of people. So that would be one example. As far as the presentation, I was fairly low tech. I was sitting in front of a store entrance, basically getting people as they were coming out. Many of them already had subscriptions, so they were not a market for me. So it was basically like standing in the middle of a river and trying to catch fish as they just kind of came by, instead of actually targeting the market. As far as the product goes, one of the biggest complaints I had about the product was that it would pile up. They didn't know what to do with these papers after they finished reading them. So I would sit down and try to make a list of things that people could do with a used newspaper. They could roll them up and burn them in their wood stove as a fuel. They could perhaps use them if you had a worm farm or worm bed. You wanted to increase the potting soil for your plants. You could make them into the castings that, you know, you could let the worms turn them into castings for you and make a high grade soil. So that's how this system works, looking at pros and cons from the product, the presentation, and the prospect. This one technique took my sales from the newspaper subscription up 300%.